In episode 47, titled Package Parseable Scan Artifacts, we focus on delivering scan outputs that both machines and humans can trust without translation gymnastics. Teams often run excellent scans and then stumble at the handoff because the data is hard to ingest, lacks provenance, or cannot be reconciled with inventory. Trustworthy packaging is the cure. When artifacts are structured, labeled, and verifiable, assessors can replicate conclusions, engineers can automate triage, and leadership can see exposure with clean roll-ups. The goal is not pretty reports. The goal is evidence that flows. Treat the package as a product with consumers, acceptance criteria, and a stable interface. That mindset turns scan results into a reliable data set that connects cleanly to risk dashboards, remediation plans, and authorization records. Begin by determining the required formats, metadata, and naming conventions before the first export leaves the tool. Decide which machine-readable forms your downstream processes and partners can actually ingest. Commonly standardized JSON, XML, or CSV structures with stable field names, and document the choice so it survives personnel turnover. Define the metadata you will attach to every file: environment tags, data classification, time zone, and contact points for questions. Establish naming conventions that encode tool, scope window, asset set, and version so consumers can identify lineage without opening a file. These decisions prevent the recurring pain of bespoke exports, and they allow automation to rely on predictable schemas. A little forethought here saves weeks of rework later when you need to reconcile 10 scans across 3 environments and 2 vendors. A trustworthy package includes 3 layers that serve different readers: raw results for automation and verification, summaries for orientation, and explicit proof of authentication where applicable. Raw results are the ground truth, the complete, unfiltered outputs from the scanner in a stable, parsable form. Summaries are curated roll-ups that explain coverage, severity distributions, and notable themes without drowning the reader. Proof of authentication closes a frequent credibility gap by showing that privileged checks actually ran, role used, scope granted, and the logged indicators that prove the scanners saw what it claimed to see. When all 3 layers travel together, assessors can verify, engineers can act, and no one wastes time guessing whether the scan was superficial or deep. Preserve the identifiers that bind findings to the real world: asset IDs, IP addresses, host names, and timestamps with noted time zones and clock sources. Do not rely on a single label that may drift. Carry multiple identifiers because assets move, names change, and networks resegment. Include the authoritative inventory keys from your configuration management database so merges and joins are deterministic. Timestamps should reflect both scan start and end, plus the reference to the time synchronization authority in use, which allows reviewers to correlate logs and events accurately. This rigor lets downstream processes link each finding to ownership, business criticality, and prior history without fuzzy matching. Precision here is what prevents duplicate tickets, orphan records, and the dreaded mismatch between what the scan says and what the inventory believes. Record the tool versions, policy bundles, and configuration profiles used so results can be replicated later without archaeology. Version information should name the scanner build, the exact signature or plugin set, and any custom rules you loaded. Policy and profile details should state authentication modes, network ranges, throttling levels, and exclusion rules, along with the rationale for each choice. This context is not trivia. It is part of the evidentiary chain. When a later run shows fewer findings, reviewers must know whether risk truly fell or whether a profile change reduced visibility. Transparent configuration metadata turns comparisons into analysis rather than arguments and preserves confidence that trend lines reflect reality rather than tool drift. Verify completeness by reconciling coverage counts with the authorized scope and the authoritative inventory. Count how many assets the inventory expected in scope, how many were reachable, and how many produced usable results. Show the deltas plainly and explain them. Decommissioned nodes, powered-off hosts, newly provisioned instances, or access blocks. Completeness checks should also confirm that credentialed scans were credentialed for the assets that require them, and that discovery did not stray beyond the agreed boundary. When your package contains this reconciliation, assessors can quickly judge representativeness, and engineers can focus on fixing exposures instead of debating whether the scan missed something. Accuracy is not only what is found, it is also what is proven to have been looked at. Avoid the pitfall of substituting screenshots for structured data, because this approach shreds traceability. Screenshots have a place as visual cues or one-off demonstrations, but they cannot anchor automation or support large-scale analysis. They lose context, break change detection, and resist any attempt to link a finding back to an asset or forward to a remediation ticket. When stakeholders ask for proof, provide structured exports with embedded identifiers and verifiable fields, and then add a minimal screenshot only if it clarifies a disputed point. The rule of thumb is simple. If a downstream process cannot parse it reliably, it is a courtesy illustration, not evidence. Keep illustrations in the appendix and keep the dataset canonical. A practical accelerant is the use of standardized export scripts that produce consistent artifacts across scans and environments. Wrap your scanner's APIs in a small, version-controlled utility that enforces the chosen formats, injects the required metadata, and applies naming conventions automatically. Build lightweight validations into the script so it fails fast when a field is missing or a count does not reconcile. Over time, extend the script to perform integrity hashing, generate manifest files, and stage outputs into the repository your assessors and partners expect. This small investment removes operator variance, reduces late-night heroics, and ensures that every package meets baseline quality without manual checks. Consistency is quality in disguise. Consider a scenario where authenticated checks fail for a subset of servers. Rather than burying the issue, document the reasons and the remediation attempts within the package narrative. Note which credentials were used, which roles were assigned, which permission errors occurred, and what you changed to correct them. Include the retry timestamps and the final state, either success with full visibility or a bounded exception with compensating analysis. This transparency does two things. It helps assessors understand exactly what they can trust in the data, and it helps operations teams fix access friction so future scans are both faster and deeper. Authenticity of process is as important as completeness of results. Protect integrity and provenance by hashing and signing archives so recipients can verify nothing changed in transit and that the package truly came from you. Generate cryptographic hashes for every file and for the archive as a whole. Include a manifest that lists the values and sign with a managed key tied to your organization. Store public keys where partners can retrieve them securely, and rotate keys with recorded dates and reasons so the trust chain remains auditable. When a question arises months later, these measures allow any party to confirm that the dataset is the same one you produced on the stated date. Integrity controls convert "we promise" into "we can prove." Provide an explicit mapping between findings, assets, and the corresponding entries in the Plan of Actions and Milestones, POA and M. Each finding should carry the asset identifiers and a stable cross-reference to the tracking record that will drive remediation. Likewise, each POAM entry should reference the originating finding identifiers and the scan package version. This bidirectional linkage lets risk dashboards roll up exposure by system, owner, or severity with confidence. And it allows auditors to travel from a remediation decision back to the evidence that motivated it. The map is the connective tissue. Without it, packages become islands and remediation becomes folklore. Validate parseability with the receiving tools and assessor workflows before declaring victory. Run sample imports into the ticketing system, the analytics layer, and the assessor's parsing scripts to confirm field names, data types, and encodings behave as expected. Fix edge cases where a tool misreads a null, a timestamp format, or a nested structure. Invite the assessor to execute their normal queries against the sample so you see the world through their interface, not yours. This pre-flight step prevents public embarrassment later and shortens the time from delivery to analysis. A dataset that loads cleanly is halfway to being believed. Conduct a brief mini-review of the package before release that checks 3 dimensions in plain language. Confirm that required data fields are present and populated where expected, with counts reconciled against scope and inventory. Confirm that formats and encodings match the agreed standards, from file names to column separators to time zone declarations. Confirm that integrity is verifiable through hashes, signatures, and manifest references, with keys and instructions available to the recipient. Capture the mini-review outcome in a simple note with a timestamp and reviewer name so a reader can see that quality gates were not theoretical. This is your assurance on the assurance. Close by marking artifacts ready and planning a dry run export to validate the pipeline under real conditions. The dry run should move through the same steps: scan completion, export, hashing, signing, manifest generation, and ingest without the pressure of a deadline or a live authorization milestone. In doing so, you will surface small mismatches and documentation gaps while there is still time to improve. When the dry run completes cleanly and the receiving parties confirm parseability and traceability, your package is not only correct, it is dependable. That is the practical finish. The artifacts are ready, and the next action is to run the export dry run to prove the path from tool to trust. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.